In this podcast, we chat about Boro's win against Coventry. We speak to Craig Johns from the Gazette about the last few days of the transfer window. We look ahead to Boro's FA Cup tie with Manchester United. And of course, we answer your podcast questions. This is the Boro Breakdown podcast, and this is all your Boro Matchday chatter in a pod.
Wants support. Curtis Fleming is there on the edge of the area. Fleming for Craig Hignett. Hit it, Higgy. Higgy hits the treble!
Connolly coming alive again. Janino wants the ball played to him. Connolly spots out Emerson!
Hello and welcome to the Boro Breakdown podcast with Jonny, Dael and Tom. We are the Boro podcast that gives you all of your Boro Matchday chatter in a podcast. And Boro made it 5 wins in a row at the Riverside over a 1-0 win over Coventry City. The goal from Andros Boro helped Boro move back into the playoff places with 45 points from 28 games. Guys, Chris Wilder wanted a reaction from Monday night, but now I want a reaction from you. Dana, how are you feeling in 3 words or a meme?
I'm actually not going to pick a meme this week. That was last week only, but I've gone for 3 words that I might have used before in a previous podcast, but the real deal, because Boro have won comprehensively now in terms of their performance. They've won with late winners, and now we've won grinding it out. And it wasn't a vintage performance from Boro. It wasn't a pretty performance, but at the same time, there wasn't anything ugly about it, because I think there's a beauty actually in winning that sort of way, where you're waiting for the referee to blow the whistle, grinding the game out, and then when he does, it's that big fist pump moment at the end. And yeah, I love those types of wins. Those are the types of wins that I know Boro for, really, under Aitor Karanka when we went up. I really love Boro winning that way. So yeah, it was a good win and another big tick in the box in terms of Boro being a team that can go up this season.
Dana's real deal. Tom, what are you going to go for? Meme or 3 words?
I'm going to go with the 3 words. I don't think I'm going to go for hard-fought win. I thought yesterday it wasn't our best performance, but I don't think the opposition or the elements actually kind of allowed for that. I thought Coventry were very good, and it was one of those games, I think, like Blackburn, where I thought both teams played well and it could have went either way. That said, though, we did what we needed to do to limit their chances. And then we had one moment of quality, which led to our goal, which ultimately sealed it. So it's a good way to win. Good that we ground that out despite not playing at our best. And yeah, on to the next one now.
I want to go with Balogun, real deal. Fantastic! What a player! What a player! He's got some fantastic technical ability, but I'm sure we'll see more of him in the near future. But guys, let's talk about Coventry then, because how would you assess the performance yesterday? Dana, I know you were saying the real deal there, so let's open up a little bit more. How would you assess it?
Yeah, it was a really interesting contest between two really good footballing sides. I think Coventry, the best side that I've seen at the Riverside this season. Their movement off the ball was really good. Some really good intricate link-up play and combination work. But Boro, I did notice a few people were questioning why Boro were playing it long from the back from Lumley. But I actually think it's a really clever tactic from Chris Wilder, because there's a YouTube video from James Alcott, the League of 92 on YouTube, which really goes into detail on the tactical side of Chris Wilder's start to his time at Boro. And one of the points that he made is that Boro do switch it up, playing it out from the back and building up attacks. And as I mentioned on the last podcast, Coventry are very good at winning the ball very high up the pitch. Callum O'Hare is still one of the best players in the division for pressing and winning possession of the ball in the final third. So for Boro to play their usual way, playing it out from the back along the floor against Coventry, I think would have played into their hands. So it was actually a really clever tactic from Boro to do that. And ultimately, the first half I actually quite enjoyed. The second half was a lot more scrappier. Both teams didn't really keep hold of the ball. I saw 16 and 17 times possession loss from either side yesterday in the second half. So it wasn't a game where I think either side had particularly great control in the second half, but Boro took their chance when they needed to. And then, of course, we ground the win out. But yeah, there was some really interesting parts to that game, which obviously we will delve into further later on in the pod.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you on the long ball, because Coventry are very, very good at setting up traps on the press. They're very well drilled in that front as well. It's where, like, if the example would be if Fry passed it to McNair, then a full press would happen, or maybe like a half press would happen. Maybe if we were to pass it to House, and it was very interesting how they were set up. I could see why Boro were looking to do that. But Tom, Coventry came into the game winning 3 out of 4. Certainly gave Boro run for the money yesterday. How would you assess it, and what impressed you by Coventry yesterday?
So I think in terms of Coventry's play, what impressed me was that link up. You can tell that group of players has been playing together for a long time. They just really know where they're all going to be at any one time. Some of the passing play around our defence was too scary for my liking, but thankfully they didn't make anything of it. Just to go back to the long ball thing, something I did notice yesterday was I think we were kind of taking advantage of the elements a little bit. We did start the first half we were in kicking towards the south stand, which we haven't been doing for quite a few games now, and coincidentally that's the way the wind was blowing as well. And I do think that when Lumley was taking these long goal kicks, that was definitely something we were looking to exploit, because Sparrow and Connolly were constantly behind that defensive line for the goal kicks. And there was a couple which just went over, and they were able to kind of run onto that. So I think that was kind of very clever from us that we managed to pick up on that and exploit in the first half.
Absolutely, Tom. I fully agree on that one. It's nice to see us be adaptable in our game and find a different way to try and grind out a result. But then, is there anything else that impressed you from Coventry yesterday? Because I know you were saying they're the best team that you've seen at the Riverside so far this season. Any more to add to that?
Yeah, I thought Jokeresh. I mean, Chris Wilder mentioned Jokeresh after the game. A very good centre forward display. Up against Boro's centre halves, I think he caused them a big problem. And obviously, we'll speak about certain players in the praising place. But I actually thought Dael Fry did really well up against him, because it was a really tough afternoon for Fry. But he went toe to toe with Jokeresh throughout the majority of the game. There were a few times where I think there was a moment in the second half where Jokeresh basically dummied it beyond Fry, and then all of a sudden you see Fry trying to catch up with him. And to be fair, he doesn't. He actually gets the block in at the end. But I thought Jokeresh, did really good. The movement, the cleverness, the dropping deep, linking up with other players. I thought he was really good. And by all accounts, Coventry fans are sick of opposition teams, fans praising them, because it seems to have happened quite a lot of times this season where they've gone to other teams' grounds and done well, but not come away with anything. But yeah, they do look like a very well-oiled unit under Mark Robins for sure.
Absolutely, and shout out to Mado for calling him Djokovic for the first half.
Did he?
As well. I know you're listening, Mado. I know. But let's move into Boro's form then, Tom, because 5 wins in a row now for Boro at home. What would you put that down to? And then B, how important is it for a home form to really kick on in a promotion season, or if we have a promotion season, of course?
Well, I think it's down to a couple of things. With the change in mentality since Wilders came in, but also there's that feel-good factor around the fans slowly growing. So even if we do go 1-0 down like we did against Reading, the fans were still behind the team, knowing that we can come back. And then on the other side of things, the team's mentality knows that we can come back from this now. So I think those two things combined are helping it quite a lot. And with strong home form, you only have to look at the last promotion season to see how important that is in a promotion campaign. That's where we picked up most of our points last time we got promoted. and it does seem like now it is becoming a bit of a fortress for us, and that can only really be a good thing in terms of trying to mount a promotion campaign.
Just to add to that as well, there was a stat I noticed before the game where we've only not scored once at the Riverside this season, which, looking into it, was the Birmingham game under Neil Warnock. So only once that we haven't scored at the Riverside this season, which is a pretty good stat, I would say.
Yeah, prolific is probably the term that you're going to be looking at there. It doesn't matter how, we'll probably only score 1 or 2, but we're prolific. But yeah, it's vital that we get these a run of games going in terms of getting results, especially at home, trying to build momentum. That's all this league's about. If you can build momentum, consistency, you're going to be up there towards the end of the season. But let's look at the game yesterday and from the very top and work our way down. Tom, Chris Wilder named an unchanged 11 to the side that lost against Blackburn earlier in the week. We spoke on the previous pod about potential changes that we could see, but were you surprised by the move?
I was, yeah. I stood in the concourse waiting for the team to come out at 2:00, and I saw that, and I was like, Like I would have expected a couple of changes this week, and we said on Tuesday it's probably the type of game where we would expect to see it. And then a couple of minutes later, after that, I was kind of thinking, you know what, he's probably given the winning 11 from the previous games a chance to turn it around from Blackburn before those changes. So I wasn't kind of angry at it. But yeah, I mean, it seemed like he wasn't I wouldn't say Wilder's afraid to make changes anyway, but he was a bit quicker to make changes in the second half than we've been used to in going for that win. But I think that's kind of based on sub appearances, proving that they can make a bit more of an impact now. So was a bit surprised to start off with, to sum that up.
Wilder did go on to say that he wanted his players to show a reaction. Do you think they actually showed that yesterday?
I think they did. I think when you look at that game in comparison to Blackburn, there were certain performances which were as close to a polar opposite as you could get from Monday night. I thought Neil Taylor improved massively. I thought Tav was probably our best player yesterday, which I wouldn't have said for Monday. I think that is kind of going back to the mentality side of things and trying to give them that chance to bounce back and put things right.
Yeah, absolutely. So the ability to prove your worth. But let's talk about the game then, because Dana, Boro had 37% possession yesterday. It's the lowest we've had under Chris Wilder, and the lowest for a long time. But are you pleased with how Boro have found another way to win? Grind out a result and try to play a different way to try and get something out of it. I know you said at the top about Chris Wilder and changing his style, but are you happy with the way that we are grinding out results now?
Yeah, definitely. You have to have those types of performances in seasons because you're going to get stern and tough opposition. I thought overall the two teams' shapes yesterday, if you look at the average positions, is very, very good. The midfield runners that they have off the ball are going to cause you problems, aren't they? And they're going to pull you out of position. I tried to think what a Neil Warnock side would have been like coming up against Coventry yesterday, because we saw it at the record. They pulled us apart, to be fair, with their work off the ball. And it kind of happened yesterday. There were a few times where we switched off a little bit and they did get in behind. Callum O'Hare was causing us problems. But yeah, it's the sign of a good team. And I've said this on the podcast before with the late winners. It's the sign of a good team as well to win in the way that we did yesterday and to be patient and to take the opportunity when it arose to us and then to see out the victory the way that we did. I think it was really, really impressive.
Absolutely, I agree with you in terms of the impressive side of things. I thought it was really interesting to see both sides use the width yesterday and try to stretch each other, which was very interesting, because previously when we've seen sides come to the other side, they're going to more of a compact shape. But with Coventry, credit, they try to be expansive, they try to pull us out of position. I thought Bidwell at left wing back, and then Matson in the second half at left wing back. They pushed Isaiah Jones back as much as they possibly could to try and nullify that outlet, and it gave the chance of Neil Taylor to try and push forward, which he couldn't do in the previous game. And I thought we created chances when we needed to, and we worked the ball well when we had it, and we tried to make it count. But the goal, Dana, lovely bit of play from Middlesbrough on the left-hand side of play with Balogun, of course. But let's break this goal down. How were we able to break Coventry's defence with Sparrow's goal?
It comes from a Neil Taylor throwing initially, and what happens is Balogun comes on and makes an impact instantly because he occupies that left space and gives an option basically for a triangle, and that is exactly what happens. You've got two Coventry players that press Neil Taylor when Tav gives him the ball back from the throw-in, and then it just gives Tav that space to run into. And it's really good combination work on the left. Tav gives it to Balogun, and then it's a really good cross from Balogun, to be fair. You can see he gets his head up, he sees Sparrow, and then, excuse me, Bidwell kind of steps out. It is poor defending from Bidwell, in fairness, on that left-hand side, because he's in a central position, but he steps out, and it gives Sparrow the space to... I mean, it was a very elegant and delicate little hop onto his backside and he slid in. I mean, it wasn't delicate the way that he probably connected with the ball in Simon Moore, but still, it was a really good goal. And in fairness, we've spoken a lot about Boro's right-hand side, but it was the left-hand side that really came to the fore yesterday in that goal. And there has been teasers of it, not in the Blackburn game, but in the Reading game, we saw some good link-up play between, I think it was Connolly, Tav and Taylor in that game. Or McNair, sorry, not Connolly. And it just didn't quite work for us. But then having Balogun there really made an impact yesterday and definitely made the difference.
Yeah, absolutely. That ball in for Spurra is absolutely beautiful. It's inch perfect. But prior to that goal, Tom, Wilder made a couple of changes. Pierrot came on for the first time. Well, for the first time to see him more than 2 minutes. Balogun came on as well for Howson and Connolly. It definitely worked because 2 minutes later we went and scored. But were you impressed the way that Pierrot and Balogun came on and influenced the game?
Yeah, definitely. As you mentioned, Balogun made an impact straight away, and it was giving us a bit more of a threat down that left hand side. I thought the link up play between him, Taylor, and Tav, and I think we kind of touched on it just after Blackburn. I definitely prefer him on that side over Connolly, just because I think being left footed on that side, it does kind of give the right angles to play the type of assist that he did for Spurra, but also I think, because he's so good with the ball at his feet, that type of link-up play on that left-hand side, it makes it a little bit more dangerous, and means we're not relying on the right-hand side as much, which is also good to see. Pierrot, I thought did okay. I thought you could tell he hadn't played for a couple of months, because I do think he was a little bit off the tempo, but I do think when he had a bit more time, had the ball at his feet, his passing range was superb. I think he made a couple of really good passes shortly after he came on. It's just he's going to need a bit of time to kind of get back up to tempo with it, really. We've seen him play better than that before. We've seen him play more physically than that before. I just think the rush showed a little bit yesterday.
With the impact that they made then, and I appreciate you saying that Pierrot looked a little bit rusty yesterday. With the impact they made, could you see this being the start of seeing them both appear more regularly in the squad? Do you think they'll maybe find a way to get in the 11?
Yeah, I think probably Balogun more than Pierrot, just from the impact that he made. And I do think he has looked bright the times he has came on the last few games. Like I said, Pierrot did, in my opinion, look a little bit rusty yesterday. But I was reading an article in Northern Echo this morning where Wilder had said he's going to get chances between now and the end of the season, so he just needs to take advantage of it. But I think he also touched on the fact that the language barrier was still a problem, and we're trying to teach him to play a style of play which he's not necessarily played before. So I think Balogun seems more ready to start, but I wouldn't see I wouldn't be surprised to see Pierrot get a couple of starts at least between now and the end of the season.
Yeah, the quality is clearly there with Pierrot, and appreciate that you were saying that language barrier could potentially be a thing. That's going to come with time. He'll probably improve even more, but I think when he does play, he fits in the squad quite well. And I would like to see him a little bit more. It was quite nice to see that maybe Howson come off, bring Pierrot in, and put obviously Crooks, and eventually did occupy that number 6 role. But it was good to see him get on the ball, make the crisp passes that we need them to, and obviously the impact that they both made was fantastic. But in terms of Balogun, then he came on for Connolly, and fans seem to be a little bit unhappy with Connolly at the moment with his 3 performances. How do you feel about it, and what do you think he needs to maybe get going if he hasn't been up to scratch just yet?
Yeah, it's a difficult conversation because it is just 3 games, but at the same time, I haven't really seen anything particularly impressive from him in the 3 games. I mean, it is early days, so I'm not going to write him off, and I've got no doubt that he will offer us something from now until the end of the season that will be incredibly valuable to us in our push for promotion, but it's just not really happened for him this season. So, well, in the 3 games so far. And to be fair, he hasn't had a lot of game time recently. I think he played maybe the cup game against Swansea where he scored 2 goals earlier in the campaign. But other than that, his chances have really been few and far between. So maybe it's just a case of time and patience. And Chris Wilder said as much after the game yesterday when he was asked a question about Connolly. He said that he's a good player, he's got a good CV, good pedigree, and that he'll be okay. But yeah, I think the link-up play between him and Sparras still, I haven't really seen many impressive signs. I will say, though, for the interest of balance, there was a good moment yesterday, I think, within the first 10, 15 minutes where they did link up, which is something at least. Because I certainly didn't see it against Blackburn, though much of that was probably to do with their defensive structure, because I thought Blackburn were good defensively. But yeah, it's a difficult conversation to have because I don't want to be in the position to write him off, and I'm certainly not going to do that. It's too early to do that. But at the same time, I haven't really been too impressed with him.
Do you think he needs more time on the pitch then to try and resolve this, or would you want him to be taken out and maybe appear in shorter stints of the game?
I think shorter stints only because I've been impressed with Balogun in contrast, and it's difficult to kind of compare them both because I feel like I'm, or a lot of people, myself included, are kind of pinning Connolly alongside Balogun. But to be fair, when they're a like for like change yesterday, you can't help but do that. But I would probably take him out the firing line because I thought Balogun obviously came on, got an assist. He made an impact yesterday against Coventry, and then maybe introduce him in spells. He doesn't look match fit to me, which would be understandable because obviously, as I said, he hasn't really played too many games recently. But yeah, it's a difficult conversation to have.
Yeah, well, he's only played 3 games for Brighton, and then he's obviously played the 3 games for Middlesbrough now, and it's difficult to get up to speed, and sometimes more matches will help you get sharper, and you'll hopefully try and make the moves that you need to. And I think when we alluded to it on the last podcast, when I was saying about pizza and ice cream, and they didn't really go together within the same, ice cream and pizza, I kind of feel like the same with Folarin Balogun. I just don't think it's just something doesn't click. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of like something's a little bit off. Maybe they're still feeling each other out and trying to understand how each other's game is.
Folarin Balogun or Folarin Connolly?
Folarin Connolly.
Folarin Connolly.
And then obviously with Balogun and Folarin, it seems a bit more the connection is kind of there already. It feels as though that they understand each other's play and game intelligence. So it's interesting for me. When I look at Connolly, I don't see him as a centre forward. I see him as more of a winger. But it'd be interesting to see if we do maybe look to him on that left-hand side for Taylor, if we are looking to try and invert our play and try and get him behind that way. But go on.
Yeah, I was just going to say one thing that I looked at some games and highlights of Connolly from his time at Brighton and read up a few things, and he seems to have one of his main traits is to cut inside on his right foot from the left. But what I noticed yesterday, we were playing him on the right and Sproul on the left at times in the first half, which was interesting. So yeah, we saw it once against Reading where he did cut inside, he had a shot and it was saved by Southwood, but I haven't really seen too much of that cut inside and shoot from him, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, it could come. It could come. There's a plenty of games to be played before the end of the season, and he could get a little bit sharper as we move on towards the end of it. But let's move into the praise and place because Joe Lumley and Marcus Tavernier were singled out by you two earlier in the week and on BBC Tees this on Saturday. And the majority of the spot as well. A lot of people enjoyed Marcus Tavernier and Joe Lumley's performances. But who gets your spot this week on this podcast? Tom, who's going to be in your praise and place?
I had 3 this week, but Tav was definitely top of that. I know I said to you guys in the group chat at half time, I thought it was obvious from the first half that he was an early kind of nominee for this, and he just carried on for the second half. I thought his work rate was absolutely fantastic yesterday. Comes back to something I've been saying for the last couple of weeks. His physical play, kind of really adapting to that centre mid role. I thought that was excellent yesterday. Won the ball back quite a lot, and was able to recycle the possession from there. So I thought it was such a turnaround from the display on Monday. From the whole team, not just him, but in terms of individual performance from Tav as well, I thought he was superb yesterday and definitely deserved to kind of be top of that. But also Joe Lumley,
Chumley.
Joe Lumley, thankfully backing up my point from Tuesday's pod of why he should be getting praised. I thought he was excellent yesterday. And also someone who I don't think was mentioned too much from people on Twitter in terms of being given praise, but Matt Crooks. I thought he did excellent yesterday. And especially when moving back to that number 6 role, when Pierrot came on and they kind of had to change things round, I thought he was great at winning back possession and winning the amount of headers that were going to win yesterday because of the long ball and the win. So yeah, I thought he did great yesterday as well.
So Tav, Lumley, and Crooks for you. Dana, who are you going to go for?
I've got 2 of them. To be fair, I've got 4. I'm going to be greedy this week. We'll touch on a few of them a little bit. I have to mention Tav, obviously. Tav was fantastic yesterday. For me, he was the man of the match. He created 4 chances in the game. No player created more. And he looked very good. He looked very balanced. And a big criticism of Tav is that he loses the ball a lot. And I don't really subscribe to that being a criticism of him too much, because he's a player that plays with risk. Of course, when it's in our own half, it's frustrating because the way that we play, we could get caught on the counter-attack. But he was good yesterday. He played through a really good ball to Connolly in the first half. He almost played a really good ball in the second half, but I don't think that the strikers were quite on the same wavelength when that ball was played through. And I thought he was really good yesterday. I agree with Tom what he said at half time, that he was an early contender for man of the match, and I do agree that he kept it up in the second half as well. He just looked really good defensively, as I think we've been accustomed to from Tav. Really good work rate. And yeah, he was good in both areas of his game, both offensively and defensively yesterday. He was crucial to that win. Lumley as well. I know there's 2 games to come. Derby and Forest are playing. Cardiff and Birmingham, I think, today. But Lumley, only Travers and Nichols made more saves than Lumley this game week so far. So I think Lumley was crucial to the win as well. And then Dael Fry, I mentioned him earlier, but Dael Fry was really good up against the very strong centre forward performance from Viktor Gyökeres. No player won more aerial duels than him in that game. So 3 there, but also Anthony Dijksteel as well. I think Anthony Dijksteel is just so underrated. He's so composed. Somebody said that he would barely sweat disarming a bomb. That was from Stu there, which I think is just a great way to describe him, to be honest. He's just so calm and composed, and he's a very, very astute defender.
Yeah, I agree with every player that you guys have mentioned. Dijksteel I pick every week. Fry, Tav, Lumley, I thought they were all great yesterday. I think Balogun definitely deserves a mention. I think I said at the start of the show, he is the real deal. He's a very, very technically gifted footballer, and you can just see the quality he possesses when he comes on the pitch. Feels like the time kind of slows down when he's on the ball. He always seems to have time and just tries to get his distribution, his decision making is quite good as well. And some players just have that gift, and some players just don't. You can work on it, but I think for a player so young to show that maturity in his game, I think it's very, very good indeed. And hopefully, and I think I would like him to start in the next game. I'm not too sure if he can play in the FA Cup, but if he can, then
I don't think he's played for Arsenal in the FA Cup. I'm not sure about Connolly though, because Connolly didn't play against Mansfield because Brighton apparently didn't want him to. So I'm not quite sure what it is with that.
Yeah, so I'm not too sure. But we'll find out. That's what the board breakdown does. But then let's move to our questions for the week, because you send us your questions on Twitter or on email, and the email address is theboardbreakdown@hotmail.com. And the first question is from Boro, and it's coming back to that Connolly question that we asked earlier. And he says, the obvious one, is Connolly good enough? Tom, do you want to go first?
I think he's probably got the potential to be good enough. I think, like we said earlier, he's not played in quite a while, and we can't really make a decision after 3 games. It just seems like Balogun's kind of outshone him in the appearances that he had. So maybe if it was switched around and he's getting appearances off the bench, trying to make an impact, then he can kind of start to show what he's all about. I think there's probably ability there. It's just he's maybe going to need a little bit more time to get it out of him.
Just needs a bit more time, and I would agree with you as well. Patience is probably needed in Connolly's case. Obviously, depending on how he fits in the system, will pretty change, but you never know. Next question is from Phil. Tom, I'll stick with you because you love the Lumley or Jumley narrative. Is Jumley starting to win the people over?
I don't know. There was a lot of kind of posts on Twitter yesterday, kind of saying, "Oh, fair enough, I slated him most weeks, but he was great today and stuff." And I was like, "He's got 10 clean sheets this season, and he has been good in the performances, especially recently that he's had. Yes, he's made a couple of mistakes, kind of earlier in the season, but you can see the improvements that he's making now. And I just feel like." If there was a mistake in the next couple of games, it might go back to that. Oh, he's rubbish. Kind of get a better goalkeeper and try and loan Dean Henderson or something like that. But
that is never, ever going to happen. By the way.
Oh no! But people keep tweeting it. I have seen that a couple of times. I'm like, we're not getting him.
He is linked on. Well, back to Tom in the studio in a second, but he is. Dean Henderson is linked with Newcastle United to the end of the season, so that is on Sky Sports right now. So the poor kid. But sorry, Tom, carry on.
Yeah, so I feel like that kind of attitude towards him could return if there was a mistake in the next few games or whatever. But I think looking at him now, he should be winning people over because he's got that clean sheet record. He's you can see the improvements he's making game by game. He's clearly working on his distribution, and even Wilder has spoke about him in press conference, and he's done enough to keep that shirt. So I don't know kind of what else he would need to do to win people over.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, Middlesbrough, we've only lost 2 games under Chris Wilder since he's took over, and appreciate the games that we've lost. I think one of them, Daniels was in goal. Of one was Blackburn. He didn't really have a chance. And it's just interesting that we're always trying to better this goalkeeper position, but there is improvement being made. And Middlesbrough are linked with a goalkeeper, of course. But Sam Holmes sends a question through our email. And he says, do we still need a new goalkeeper, even though we've won Dana? So would and should Boro go in the market for a goalkeeper, or should they stick with Lumley?
I don't think we should anyway, because it's January. What are you going to get? I suppose the options are quite limited in terms of a proper number one. You could probably bring in a backup or a third choice, but in terms of a number one, you're not really going to get a lot of options, to be honest, because they're going to be starters and very important players for other clubs, unless you're going to flout money around and basically try to entice them with big cash, which Boro aren't going to do because they're not stupid. Then it's probably not going to happen. And in fairness, I agree with Tom. There's not much that Lumley has done the past couple of games that has given me any reason to doubt him, to be honest. So I think more trust should probably be put into Joe Lumley, and I'm definitely going to exercise that. To be fair, we put the snippet out of last week's podcast about the praise in place, and we did get a little bit of comments from people saying, were you praising him for not making a mistake this week? And people questioning why we were praising him. But to be fair, he's done well in the last 2 games, last 3 games even. So, yeah, I think Lumley definitely deserves praise, a little bit more trust, I think.
Yeah. Okay, then no problem at all. Joe Lumley has been released from Middlesbrough Football Club. The next question, it's from Ty, and he says, do you think Balogun should start the next game? And thoughts on Pierrot's time on the pitch? Thought he looked decent personally. I know we've covered quite a bit on this, so just a quick short answer on this, Tom. But do you think Balogun should start the next game?
Yeah, definitely.
Next question.
Short answer.
Next question. Straight answer, straight to the point. That's what you want. And next question, it's from Ryan. Could be a quick one for you as well, yeah, because Dael Fry, is he the best centre half in the league? Agree or strongly agree?
We'll always strongly agree.
Strongly agree. And then the next question and the final question, it's from Danny, and he says, which positions do you think Wilder will want in? So which 1 or 2 positions do you think Wilder will want in? Tom, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, sure. I think a centre-back and a centre defensive midfielder. I think the centre-back will probably be a left-sided one to give competition to McNair. And obviously, I don't think Howson really has any competition in that space at the moment. So that's probably an area where we should look to strengthen as well.
Okay, then. Well, let's get a bit more transfer news then, because we spoke to Craig Johns this week from the Gazette to get an inkling of how busy Boro will be in the transfer window in the last couple of days.
Just a quick disclaimer to say that I'm actually recording this at lunchtime on Saturday before the Coventry City game, so I appreciate there's a little time between now and when the podcast will be released, just in case anything I mention is announced in that time, because of course, you know, we're into the final days of the transfer window, and Middlesbrough are hoping to still be busy. We spoke to Chris Wilder yesterday, and he would still like a couple of incoming transfers if possible. He's managed to get 4 in so far in this window. He would like a couple more if possible, just to strengthen his options in various places, although understandably he hasn't actually named the positions that he would like to strengthen in. Of course, the big thing as well, though, is balancing those books, and you know, some players still have to go out. He named a couple of weeks ago 4 who could publicly leave, and so far only 1 of them has. In the meantime, you know, it looks like Marcus Brown's move to Charlton has broken down, and indeed Cardiff had shown interest in Uche Ikpeazu, but they've had to look elsewhere too, because Boro prefer a permanent and they wanted a loan. It looks like they're going after ex-Boro striker Jordan Hugill instead, and you know, and as the time ticks down, Boro need to balance the books. They do want to get these players off the book. James Leah-Saliki, the third, I forgot to mention that. You know, Boro's stance on that may soften, and you know, Uche does have alternative championship interest. It could be a case that it gets so late in the window and they have to accept a loan move in the end for Uche and then look to sell him in the summer. But of course, Cardiff now would appear to be off the table, given that they've moved elsewhere and gone after Hugill instead. But yeah, they want to get those players out, and that'll help balance the books. But they have had the boost of the you know, their cut of the Manchester United tickets. Of course, 9,500 or thereabouts tickets sold for that trip to Old Trafford next Friday. So, you know, that's given them a cash boost as well, which will hopefully help. In terms of, you know, what incomings they'd potentially look at, I think you look at the squad now and you think, could he possibly do with another centre-back? I have heard a name. It would be a signing more in the ilk of Caelan Boyd-Muntz. A name was mentioned to me, a youngish centre-back, decent level, but I think he'd be coming in as kind of a, you know, a project like Boyd-Muntz has as well, if that one does come to fruition. Right wing back too, they didn't bring back Jed Spence this month for obvious reasons, but you know, beyond Isaiah Jones, the other options they have for that position, if Jones were to miss a game, you know, they're not natural and they would have to step out of positions in the team where they're also doing well. So it would, you know, maybe unbalance Middlesbrough's side a bit if Jones were to come out. So that could be an area you could see them strengthen. And also I think defensive midfield as well. Were Johnny Howson to come out again, you know, Paddy McNair can step into that role. Matt Crooks could probably drop deeper as well, but you then lose them in the roles that they're playing, and so, you know, if they could get an option in those kind of positions, I think that's where you'd be looking at strengthening in the final days of the window. But, you know, that's difficult in itself, because as we're seeing, you know, they're coming in as backup, really, certainly initially, to players who are, you know, their place in the team is quite well cemented right now. So, you know, convincing players to come into those positions will be difficult, but it could be why, you know, as I say, the centre-back name that I have heard but haven't cemented in terms of whether they are going to firm up that interest quite yet. You know, it could be like a Boyd-Muntz type signing where they are, you know, like a project for Middlesbrough, and you know, they'd be happy to come in, have the coach in, you know, and push for the first team, but appreciate that right away they might not be first team players. So you know, they're what I would say Boro will be looking to do in the final days of the window. But you know, it's not easy, and it's not guaranteed that they will be able to do that. The 4 signings that they have brought in, certainly the 3 senior players, have strengthened the first team, and I think Wilder is happy with that. I think the one position people would ask about most would be goalkeeper, but I think given everything Wilder's said this month and how he's backed the goalkeepers he's got, my failing on that would be that he will have looked at that position. He does put emphasis on that position, but there hasn't been a viable option, a good value option for Boro this month, and therefore I think it'll be a position he looks to kind of strengthen in the long term, unless this gives Joe Lumley now until the end of the season to kind of prove himself. And to be fair, since Wilder's come in, he's not done an awful lot wrong. So a chance for Joe Lumley, I would imagine, until the end of the season to show what he can do, and if he feels to kind of convince, then that'll be a one for the summer, I would suspect. But yeah, so that's what I'm expecting in the kind of final few days of Boro's transfer window.
Thank you very much for that, Craig. And we've got a podcast with Craig and Dom coming out on Thursday where we're going to review the transfer window in full. We did one in the earlier transfer window. We're going to do it again this week, so look out for that one. But guys, Craig's alluded 1 to 2 signings. Boro going to be a little bit busy. One signing could be for the future. The rest could be for now. But do you think Boro should look to add to this squad before the transfer window? Do you think we still need to delve in, add a bit more experience, add a bit more players to the current what we currently have? Tom, do you want to take this one?
I think we could use a couple. As I just said in the last question of the areas I think we should strengthen. But that should only be once we've moved the players out that we're trying to get out. I think if we don't do that and they can't leave, then we risk going into the second half of the season with a squad too big, probably a bit too much on the books, and that could influence financial fair play. So it's obviously the last thing Gibson would want to do. So I think if we could get Saliki, Brown, and Uche out the door, then hopefully it just leaves a little bit of room for a couple more signings around the first team.
Okay, then, Dana, on the flip side, would you be happy if we didn't make any moves and kept things as they were?
I'd be content. I don't think I'd be happy per se, but definitely content. I mean, we have solved the problem, or maybe not solved as yet, time will tell on that, but we've definitely added more options in the attacking areas of the pitch and in terms of strikers, because you think about who we had before going into January, we only had Uche, Spara, and Coburn. So now we've really fleshed that area out, added more meat to the bones, and that's a massive plus. But I would like to see a left wing back, an attacking one, just to add more balance to that left-hand side as a long-term option as well, with that deep line playmaker in that Howson role, and then left-sided centre-half. So if we don't get them in, it's not the end of the world. We still have strengthened the squad, but yeah, content rather than happy, I'd probably say.
Okay, well, there could be a lot of outgoings happening. We have seen a couple this week, but one final thing in terms of incomings. Hypothetically speaking, if you could pick or bring in a sensible transfer of your choice, who would it be and why? Go on, Dan. I'll stick with you. Who would you go for?
I would go. I know I just mentioned the left wing back there. I would go with Conor Grant of Plymouth, someone that is a fantastic player. He was converted from a central midfielder to a left wing back under Ryan Law, and there's a really good piece from Liam Henshaw who does a little bit of analysis in scouting. It's on Sporting Life, a really good in-depth piece on him. He's a very good crosser of the ball, very good in terms of progressive passes, good in terms of key passes, a really good attacking wing back, I think, which is what we need, because just to take the heat off Isaiah Jones a little bit, if we could bring somebody in that left wing back position that could basically do the same as Jones, I think that would be a really good move for Boro. Whether he would move from Plymouth, I'm not so sure. Obviously, Ryan Lowe did leave, so it might be a case of can Conor Grant maybe push up another level. He's 26, I believe, so it's probably a time for him to maybe assess his options a little bit, but whether that will happen in January, not so sure. Might be one more for the summer, but you never know. I know Boro have obviously signed Neil Taylor to an extended contract, but for me, it's just offering that little bit different attacking option on that left-hand side to compare to the right and to complement the right rather than contrast it.
Yeah, what a great shout, by the way. He's a fantastic left back. I'm surprised that he hasn't been picked up already. But again, now that we've said that, it's good. He's going to go to Manchester City next week.
No, he'll go to Preston. I'll tell you, he'll follow Ryan Lowe to Preston probably.
Yeah. who look very good at the moment under Ryan Moore. But we'll come to that in the next couple of weeks. But Tom, who is going to be your sensible transfer or transfers?
So I've went for an option in centre defensive midfield, and I'm going with Andy Rinomota from Reading. Very similar stats to Jonny Howson at the moment this season, even though he's only played 10 games on a small sample size, but also last season where he played the majority of the games, it was still very similar. 2 successful tackles a game, 1 interception, 1 clearance. I think he scored as the strengths for him has been strong at tackling, holding onto the ball. 24 years old, I think it is, so he's got plenty of potential to even improve if he's fitting into a system like Wilder's. But also his contract expires at the end of this season, so probably a bit of a cheaper option if we can get him in the last 6 months and kind of get him competing with Howson for that number 6 spot.
Yeah, man, that's a great shout as well. I appreciate our contract as well, competing for Howson too. I'm joining you on this front, Tom, with like the centre defensive mid. And he's been injured quite a bit the last couple of years, but I think he's a really talented boy. And I feel like we could twist this team's arm to try to, because I know they're in a financial restrictions at the moment. But Derby County's Christian Bale. I feel like, good on the ball when he has played. Appreciate his main strengths to line, that dribbling, interception, try to split up the play, try to get up to the wing backs, and maybe he could be that long-term success. He's only 24 years of age, 23, 24 years of age, and yes, he has had injuries, and he's going to need time to maybe adjust. I believe he's meant to play today for Derby. So we could potentially. Why not? Play upon this financial difficulty of Derby. A good, talented boy needs game time, of course. And you give him 6 months where he could probably find his feet and come back into the game again. But could potentially be a good signing, I think. But
one of the best in his position, I think, Christian Bielik in the league. So it would be a good shout. But can you imagine Derby doing business with us? Really?
I don't think they'd have I don't think they'd have a choice at this point.
Well, yeah, very true.
If they're going out of business by February, technically.
To be fair, yeah, he is probably their biggest asset, I would say. And given their financial cripplement, should we say, yeah, their hand could be forced.
Yeah, well, that's it. We'll soon see when the transfer window shuts. But there has been quite a few outgoings this week. Callum Kavanagh went to Harrogate. Sam Folarin went to the Queen of the South. And Isaac Fletcher has went to Hartlepool, respectively. Some big moves for these young lads. Dana, how important is it to get these guys out and trying to play more first-team football?
Yeah, it is. But most importantly, it's really important on the type of team that we send them to, which of course the loan people, the recruitment team will obviously keep in mind. There is a big clamour a lot of the time of whenever the match reports come out from the under-23s or the under-18s, when you see Kavanagh scoring a hat-trick, when you see Kavanagh scoring again the next week, there's a big clamour for, get him in the first team. Well, I think sometimes that's quite destructive to a player's career. I mean, Kavanagh is 18 years old. This isn't somebody that we should fast-track into the first team, because I think you need to be delicate with some young players. I remember when we spoke to Josh Walker, he said obviously he made his debut in that Fulham game where we famously played a lot of academy players. I think he was 16. He said he was 16 on that day. And he said it was probably too early for him because he was always so used to progressing that it almost felt like it was a little bit of a burden for him potentially. So we never want that to happen. I think you could maybe even say Tav was probably put in the first team a little bit too early because it raises expectation, doesn't it? And yeah. I think with a lot of fans, not just Boro fans, but a lot of football fans in general, they put academy players on a pedestal, so much so that there's only one way for them to go, and that is a big crash down. And all of a sudden they go from the best player in the planet to one of the worst. And that happens a lot. So I think we should probably protect the young players, send them out on loan, and then see what they're like maybe around the age of 20, 21. But definitely not a case of get him in the first team. I understand the cause for that. But at the same time, I don't think it's a wise decision to put somebody like Kavanagh in the first team right now.
Kavanagh could do another 5 years on loan, really, and still be, 22, 23?
Yeah.
23.
It's that young, yeah.
And still so young as a centre forward. But Tom, how important is it then to be patient with these type of players, let them develop in their own time, and then progress them into the first team eventually?
Oh, I think it's very important. I don't think we should be expecting these players to kind of come back from loan and be first, like straight in the first team. Other than maybe Sam Folarin, if he's anything like if he's Ty McQueen in the South, anything like Isaiah Jones, might be something in the water up there, and he just comes back an absolute beast on the wing or something. But I think it's a good development loan for all of them. Then they come back better. Hopefully, kind of push on for a better loan next season as well, and then kind of continue improving from there.
And even though he was captain against Reading and made an influential part of the game to help us win the game, but do you think Josh Coburn just needs some time on loan as well, Tom?
Potentially. I think we saw against Blackburn, he was the fifth striker on the pitch at that point when we were going for the McLaren ball right at the end. But
I thought he was going to call you on the stands there, Tom, and say, "Oh, Tom, go up front as well."
I need you running off as either side for that, but
with his one knee.
Oh yeah,
one knee, yeah.
hopping past us on the overlap.
Yeah, well, that's it. I played my game on Friday, scored a hattie, and then that's it. That's what we done now for like the next month and a half.
But yeah, I mean, regular football for Coburn could be a good thing. But also, it looks like he might get chances kind of in and around the first team just to kind of come on when we're playing McLaren ball. So that could equally be as useful for him as development.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, some players do very, very well in and around the club and play off with different players within our team, and some players prefer going out loan and playing the trade there. But one player that could and is set to leave Middlesbrough in the coming days is Marcus Brown. Dana, the Charlton deal is just being claimed that it's off, and he's now set to join Oxford in a permanent deal, undisclosed fee. Marcus Brown had so much talent and ability, but you're just disappointed in the way it's just never really taken off.
Yeah, it's a bit unfortunate for him, isn't it? Because when he came into the team in that Brentford game, January 2021, was it? Obviously, he suffered that injury, which curtailed his season and also kind of, in turn, it's curtailed his Middlesbrough career because Chris Wilder comes in, we play wing backs, he doesn't play with wingers, so he doesn't really suit the system, very similar to Onel Hernandez in that respect. So yeah, it's disappointing because there was a lot of ill discipline from Marcus Brown on the pitch in terms of being a bit of a hothead. He did get sent off in that Swansea game, which kind of threw the game for us under Jonathan Woodgate. Was taken off at half time, 2 games in a row under Woodgate as well, earlier on in that season. And even buried in within that, there was potential there for him to be a very good player, and it just hasn't happened, has it? The circumstances, obviously the injury, and then a little bit of his application on the pitch and that kind of rush of blood from him, which, I mean, it's the passion of the game, isn't it? But I think sometimes he should probably have just reined it in, and obviously we'll know that now looking back. But yeah, quite disappointing, but nothing against him. Obviously it just hasn't worked. Going to miss his dancing videos from his Instagram stories of his rehab days. But yeah, obviously wish him all the best. It's a really good move going back to Oxford because they really like him there.
They've got posters all over the walls of Marcus Brown at Oxford. But Tom, right move, permanent basis? Or do you think you could have maybe given one more loan and try to give him one final chance?
I think it's the right thing on a permanent. I think it's a similar thing to Uche, where you can have the right attitude and that determination to succeed. But if you're not fitting into the manager's system, then your chances are going to be very limited, and you're not going to grow as a footballer. I think Oxford, as Dana's just mentioned there, it's a club that absolutely loves Marcus Brown. Will probably be very happy to get him back. He'd be playing a lot of football there, and he's going to have more of a chance to develop as a footballer from that move. So yeah, it's probably the best thing for him.
Okay, I think it's the best thing for him. Let's look ahead then to Friday now, and Boro travel to the Theatre of Dreams to play Manchester United in the FA Cup 4th round. Ralph Rangnick's Reds are coming off an extended break in the Premier League schedule and have won 3 out of the last 4 games. Unfortunately, we couldn't get a Manchester United perspective this week. They feel like they're too big time for Boro now, but we'll break them down better than they will anyway. So, guys, let's look at the game in general. How do you think we can beat this Manchester United side? Dana and Tom, I'll pass you the mic. Let's go.
It's difficult because obviously, first and foremost, stating the obvious here, they have quality that is far, far superior to ours. I mean, there is a big conversation around the performance of the team, the application of the team. Fans aren't happy with the players because they don't feel like they're really pulling their weight so much. So there's a big conversation around that at the moment. It seems a bit of a circus-like situation at Old Trafford and Manchester United at the moment, but I mean, the last game that we played against them, obviously in the cup, a very similar situation of what Boro will go into on Friday, in a good way, in a season where we're challenging for promotion. I can't really remember too much of that game. I know obviously it was 0-0 in normal time, extra time. I can remember Memphis Depay had an absolute stinker. I think Grand Ledbetter had a chance where he tried to loft it over the goalkeeper. Can't remember too much with it.
I remember James Wilson not having a touch and getting dragged after 45 minutes. So.
They were pretty bad. I kind of remember them being pretty poor that match. But I think it's probably one where I would expect us to be bold. I would expect us to be brave. I would expect us to try and keep it tight at the same time. I mean, Chris Wilder's sides probably won't cave under pressure of the opponent. So I think it'll be a game where I'll be interested to see our approach to it. Obviously, I don't think we're going to, as I said, I don't think we're going to cave under the pressure of Manchester United. I think we're going to try and attack them and be bold and brave. But maybe it is just a case of keeping it tight and seeing if we can maybe ride it to extra time and then potentially penalties as well.
Absolutely. Tom, is there anything to add to that? Any players to look out for, maybe? Any we've ever heard of?
Well, I mean, it depends what type of team they're going to put out, doesn't it? I mean, if they put out a full-strength team, then the obvious one's Ronaldo, but I don't feel like they'd risk him against Boro when they've got other games coming up. I think they might even have a couple of midweek games coming up. So I'm not entirely sure, but I think obviously the key to winning this is keeping it tight at the back with our three centre backs trying to nullify their strikers, and I feel like United they play kind of a narrow formation, and it's still a 4-2-2-2. So probably hit them out wide. That might work well for Jones to kind of being able to run at people, and hopefully if we can have Balogun playing as well, then we've got that Taylor, Tav, Balogun link up on the left hand side to hopefully create some chances as well. I think we just need to try and play our game, not be kind of overawed by the occasion or not be threatened by them. At the end of the day, like they kind of have seemed a little bit disjointed since Ranić came in, and I feel like we've adapted to Chris Wilder very quickly. So I think we're coming into this where one team's kind of really well drilled in terms of the playing style, and the other one's still learning it. So hopefully that can play into our advantage as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think when you're saying they're on the 4-2-2-2, when they play it quite inverted, I feel like it's for Middlesbrough, you're probably going to have to be expansive to try and get in and around them. But then also, what I would probably like to see a little bit more of is our centre-back coming at the midfield a little bit more against Manchester United. Try and make things a little bit more difficult. Try and use the extra man well when we can. And then hopefully, if you do see that as well, if you can see Paddy McNair maybe coming at the midfield, and then you also see like a Balogun drop in, you're causing a lot of carnage in that midfield space and try to overload it and try and get in behind as well. So I think we could potentially see that. But of course, the quality is going to be vast and it's different. And it could be quite difficult even if a Boro, but you never know. It's the magic of the cup. But guys, what is your predictions going to be? Tom, what are you going to go for?
I'm going to go 2-0 Boro. I'm going to be brave with it this week and say, we'll benefit from, playing regularly, being well drilled, and they've just all went for holiday in the international break, haven't they? So I'm going to go with the 2-0.
2-0 win. Dael, what are you going to go for?
Yeah, I wish I could be optimistic like Tom, but I just feel like their quality will probably get the better of us. I'll probably go for a Man United win, but I'm looking forward to the game nonetheless. It's actually the last away game that me and my dad went to was actually Old Trafford. Obviously, the whole display, the protest, display of unity towards the steelweights. My dad lost his job very quickly after that, so I think circumstances and obviously money as well. We haven't been to an away game since, so it's somewhat a full circle moment, I think. So it'd be great to repeat the feat of last time, but I think Man United will probably win.
Yeah, he doesn't get to many away games, does Dave? Does he? Doesn't want to travel.
Unfortunately, not. I know he's everywhere. He's honestly everywhere, so you can't get to them. But yeah, it'll be a good one. This one, I think.
Yeah, well, hopefully it'll be better than Blackburn. But guys, what he's looking forward to the most, I know you two are going. I couldn't justify paying £46 to go and watch it. But Tom, what are you looking forward to the most?
Just the kind of event as a whole, really. I'm off work that day, so it'll be like a long kind of lead up to it, and then just kind of just the experience of going there. I've not actually been to Old Trafford since 2002.
Nearly 2003.
Since the Boro versus Arsenal FA Cup semi-final.
Yeah.
So it'd be good to go again. I just remember from that day there was a chips and curry place around the corner, which actually eclipses the van from around the corner from Riverside.
I don't know how you could remember.
Hopefully that's still there.
It's 20 years ago, like literally. 20 years.
Tom's like sneaking around Old Trafford, like, where's that curry? Where's that chips and curry? And it's not there.
I googled it last week. What I thought I remembered the name of it was, and like the top review was like, "I'm never going here again." The guy picked up a sausage and a fish with his hands instead of using the tongs. I was like,
never meet your heroes.
Maybe not, but
maybe because you're just so hungry that it tasted so nice. But
I think it was just the feeling upset after getting knocked out of the cup.
Yeah, Fester's own goal. I was there as well. Showing our age, but I'm going to go 1-0 Boro win. We're going to go at the 5th round of the FA Cup, and then we're going to win it all and get promoted. But that's it, guys. Thank you very much for joining me, as always. And thank you very much to the listeners for listening. But Boro make it 5 wins in a row at home, climb back into the playoffs, and 2 defeats in 12. Things are looking up for Boro, and consistency is key in this division. This is the Boro Breakdown podcast, and that was all your Boro Matchday chatter in a pod. Up the Boro Breakdown.